Hello, parishioners. Day 87 of the Bible in a Year. I'm Father Mark, and we are reading chapter 19 through 21 of the book of Joshua. And again, Joshua and later the book of Judges, we're going to continue to see the conquest of Canaan and all these difficult passages which I've been trying to speak about. There's a wonderful summary of all this in a Bible that has just come out after 25 years of researching and preparing. It's called the Ignatius Catholic Study Bible. Beautiful, wonderful thing put together by Scott Hahn and Curtis Mitch, and Dr. John Bergsma, my favorite, has been involved in it as well. It is definitely worth it, even though it weighs a ton and it's a giant Bible. But it's got lots and lots of footnotes and little articles in it, and one of them is the conquest of Canaan, and it kind of gives a little summary, and I'll just go over it right now a little bit. How do we make sense of all these difficult, dark passages where it seems that God is commanding that all of the inhabitants be wiped out? And that is very painful and hard for us to hear and listen to. But when you look at the whole Bible and the whole of all the symbolism and all of the themes of the Bible. For example, one of them is priesthood and another is sanctuary. Certain areas and certain people are very sacred and holy. So Canaan was to be the sacred sanctuary, the precincts of good, right worship. So it's just absolutely important that little country, little area be cleansed of all the idolatry which was there. And so it was kind of divine judgment. That's the first of the six kind of things to think about, six considerations. The first is basically they're divine judgment, divine responsibility, divine protection, divine impartiality, divine accommodation, and divine pedagogy. So what are these? Well, the first one is divine judgment. That just simply means that God used this very special people who are his priestly people and his very son, his own kind of, as his right arm to punish or to bring judgment on a nation. When a nation or a city is destroyed by an earthquake or a flood or a fire, we kind of, maybe it's because of their sin. Well, if God does it by means of a natural disaster, we're not so upset. But if God uses his Israelite priestly people to do it, it just seems strange to us. Now we know in Exodus 23, there's a relationship between priesthood and kind of warlike zeal against idolatry, because we know that the tribe of Levi were ordained themselves by precisely being kind of violent and standing up. So it just kind of shows us that priests need to be kind of aggressive, kind of strong against evil, just very firm. And so it's a spiritual warfare, and priests are the leaders of that kind of spiritual warfare. And the Israelites were the priestly people. Another second one is divine responsibility. Basically, as I say, that God is responsible. God is always responsible for all death, and it's a punishment for all of our sins, Adam and Eve and the whole human family. So God is responsible for all death, even a stillborn or a diagnosis or an earthquake or flood. Parents get upset with God, and atheists get upset with God, and because when death of the innocent happens, and it's always the case, but it's especially the case when it looks like the Israelites were having to be the instruments of God's judgment. But ultimately, it's not the Israelites; it's God's responsibility. God is responsible for life and death. He's the master of all life and all death. The next theme is divine protection, that God is always protecting people, and perhaps he needs to protect babies who are consecrated to Satan, in these idolatrous groups of people, and save them from growing up, in that world where they might later become sinful and then be in danger of punishment. Sometimes babies die stillborn or as little infants, and we just have to somehow, I guess, believe that God's going to let them grow up in heaven, and they get to be like angels in heaven, and it's perhaps better, maybe in some of these cases, that they didn't have to grow up in a place or a situation where they were among idol worshipers or Satan worshipers. And then a fourth theme. Now, none of these are convincing on their own, but if you look at all of them and you kind of see, well, this maybe there's something that you can hold on. You kind of just decide which one seems more convincing to you. The next one is divine impartiality, and that is that God is impartial, that he's strict, not just with, it's not racism, it's not, genocide or racial cleansing or something, or the Israelites are the superior race, because actually the Israelites too are punished, and if they get into idolatry, as we're going to see in the book of Judges next, really, whenever they go awry, they get punished and they lose their land, and the Canaan is on lease to those who worship correctly, but if you worship incorrectly, you lose it, and so God is impartial. It's God's land. God is the divine owner of the land, according to Leviticus chapter 25, verse 23, and he just leases it. And the covenant is the lease agreement. And if the Israelites fail, they too will be punished, and even killed. And so this is divine impartiality. Next, we have divine accommodation, and that is that God is accommodating to Israel's weakness, that they're so hard of heart, and they would certainly fall into idolatry if they lived next to people who are idolatrous. And so even though it's wrong, it would be better if they were good missionaries and they could, by their example and goodness, convert the neighbors, but they're not able to, and they're quickly falling into sin. And so because of that, God accommodates and gives them Deuteronomy, this second law, which is not a good law, but it's as it says, not good. These are laws that are not good, as it says in Ezekiel chapter 20 to 25. But these laws that are not so good are because of this God accommodating to this people that's not so good. All right, and finally the last one is divine pedagogy. In The City of God, a book by St. Augustine, he says that God is like a father who's gradually raising his child and teaching the child. You don't teach a little kid calculus. You start with, arithmetic, and you start with simple things and gradually teach. And so, these warfare laws are very early in the stage of growth of Israel's formation. We can also look at the fact that, Jesus Christ is the firstborn Son of God, the Father, and he was innocent. He was the innocent sufferer par excellence. He was perfectly innocent, but he suffered and died. And so all those babies who suffered, and even, when King Herod was killing the babies in Bethlehem, the holy innocents, they are symbols of Christ. And so it's kind of divine pedagogy, perhaps, to see that they're prophecies or they're types of Christ. They're helping us to understand how an innocent one was going to have to suffer for the sake, because of the others. Getting back to Joshua chapters 19 to 21, it's all of these descriptions of taking over certain areas of Canaan. But in the end, as Father Schmitz said in verse number 43 of chapter 21, it says that the Lord gave them rest on every side. So now finally we're going to rest a little bit from some of this, and they're going to get to settle down into the land. There's going to be more adventures to come, but for the most part, they have succeeded in coming into God's holy land.